the orchard, the dungeon, and the girl who never heard him calling. Chapter 8 A brief fire beneath a house of stone. They buried Elias Seldo in the small churchyard below St. Ara's Hill, where the graves leaned slightly east from years of wind. Mary chose the place. Not Aster Hall. Not the family plot of some generous lord pretending at remorse. Not the high cemetery near the chapel where old names slept under carved angels and clean stone. Elias belonged where Lowmere could reach him, where muddy boots could stand without apology, where the mill bell could be heard on wet mornings and the road to the fields curved past the church wall. The town came. More of them than Mary expected. Farmers left rows unfinished. Mill workers came still dusted with flour. Washerwomen stood with red hands folded under black shawls. Children were pulled close by mothers who did not want them staring and could not stop staring themselves. Old Bram from the mill cried openly and blamed the damp. Thomas Reed stood beside Mary with his cap crushed in both hands, his face raw from sleeplessness. Maribel came last. She wore black without ornament. No veil. No gloves. Her hair was braided simply and tied at the end with a strip of dark ribbon. Lady Serapha walked beside her, pale and hollow-eyed. Captain Garin Pike followed at a distance, not as a guard now, but as a man who had not yet discovered what to do with his own hands. No carriage brought Maribel. She walked down from Aster Hall. The town noticed. Lord Edric did not attend. The absence was not mistaken for grief. When Maribel entered the churchyard, the murmuring stopped. No one bowed. That, more than any insult, marked the day. Lowmere had spent generations bending itself around Aster Hall. Now the people watched its daughter cross the grass and withheld the old shape of obedience. Maribel did not seem to notice. Or perhaps she noticed and accepted it. Mary stood at the grave. For a moment, neither woman spoke. The coffin between them had been made by Thomas's uncle, rough pine sanded as smooth as his tools allowed. Elias's name had been carved into the lid by old Bram, whose hands shook and spoiled the first board. The second held Elias Seldo. Nothing else. Mary said he had not needed decoration while living and would not want it after. Maribel stopped across from her. "I brought something," she said. Mary looked at her. Maribel opened her hand. Inside lay the torn note Elias had once given her, pieced together as well as she could manage. The paper had been backed with a scrap of linen to keep it from falling apart. Beside it was the pressed apple blossom, browned at the edges, fragile as ash. Mary stared at it a long time. Then she nodded. Maribel knelt and placed it on the coffin before the first earth fell. "He wrote badly," Mary said. Maribel looked up, startled. Mary's mouth trembled. "When he was little. Couldn't keep the letters on the line. His father said the boy wrote like a chicken escaping rain." A sound passed through Maribel that was almost a laugh and almost not. "He improved," she whispered. "Not enough to be proud of himself, I'd wager." "No." He was embarrassed by it. "Good," Mary said. "That sounds like him." The priest began to speak. His words moved over them in the old pattern, polished by repetition until grief could hold them without thinking. Dust, mercy, rest, light. Maribel heard only pieces. The rest of her attention stayed fixed on the coffin, on Mary's hands, on the torn note lying over pine wood. When the first shovel of earth struck, Thomas turned away. Mary did not. Maribel did not either. She owed Elias the sight of what had been done. Afterward, the town drifted slowly from the churchyard. Some touched Mary's shoulder. Some left bread, coins, Folded cloth. Poor people gave in practical ways because sorrow still had to eat. Mary accepted all of it with the stiff grace of someone too tired to refuse love. Tomas remained by the grave after most had gone. Maribel stood beside him. For a while they watched the fresh mound of earth in silence. He asked me to run, Maribel said. Tomas swallowed. I told him to. He said no because of me. He said no because he was Elias. She looked at him. Tomas's eyes were red, but his voice had steadied. You'll want to make it your fault, he said. Don't take all of it. There's plenty to go around. Maribel looked back at the grave. That sounds like advice from someone not taking his own. No. It's advice from someone who knows the shape of a bad habit. A little wind moved through the churchyard grass. Maribel folded her arms against the cold. What will you do now? She asked. Tomas gave a bitter half-smile. Feed his goats, probably. Mary says the angry rooster likes me least, so naturally I've inherited his hatred. Despite herself, Maribel smiled faintly. Then it vanished. I want to help her. Mary. Yes. She won't want Aster money. I know. She may throw it at you. I know. She has good aim. I deserve worse. Tomas sighed. That kind of talk won't mend a roof. Maribel looked at him again. He nodded toward the road. Find a way that doesn't look like charity from the hall. Buy Seldo barley at a fair price through someone else. Cancel the seed debts publicly, not as pity, as correction. Make Ven's records honest if you can find where the rat hid them. Mary can survive help if it comes dressed as justice. Maribel studied him. You're clever. I try not to show it. People ask for things. Elias trusted you. Tomas looked away. Yes, he said. He did. That was all he could manage. At Aster Hall, Lord Edric waited in the east study. He had not watched the funeral from the windows. He told himself this mattered. A lesser man might have hidden behind curtains, might have looked down at the road and counted who attended. Edric did not need to look. Reports would come. Reports always came. But no report came before Maribel did. She entered without knocking. He sat behind his desk, a letter unopened before him, Isolde's blue-ribboned bundle locked away again in the lower drawer. You attended, he said. I did. How is Mrs. Seldo? Maribel looked at him with plain disgust. Do not perform concern for me. His mouth tightened. She crossed the study and placed something on his desk. A small iron key. Edric looked at it. The key to my room, she said. I will not lock myself in any more. If you wish to imprison me, you will need guards where everyone can see them. Dramatic. Accurate. He leaned back slightly. You are grieving. Yes. You are angry. Yes. And you believe those feelings make you wise. No, Maribel said. They make me awake. The answer settled between them. Edric's gaze moved over her face. In the days since Elias had been found, his daughter had altered in ways not visible enough for strangers to name. She stood differently. Less like someone bracing against correction, more like someone who had discovered that correction could be survived. Her eyes had changed most. He had wanted the boy gone from them. Instead, Elias had become permanent there. I have been advised, Edric said slowly, to step back from public estate matters until the magistrate completes his inquiry. Advised by whom? Lord Halbrecht. Good. His eyebrows lifted a fraction. You understand what that may mean for you? Yes. For the estate? Yes. For your future? Maribel laughed softly, without amusement. My future was buried under my bedroom before it was buried in the churchyard. Edric's hand flexed once against the desk. I did not intend his death. No, she said. You intended his silence. Death was only more silence than you planned. The words struck cleanly. For a moment, Edric looked older. Maribel expected denial. A correction. Some polished argument about duty, station, recklessness, protection. But he only looked at the key on his desk. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. I loved your mother. Maribel's face hardened. Do not use her as shelter. I am not. You always are. Her death. Her gentleness. Her fears. Her name. You build walls and hang her portrait on them. Edric closed his eyes briefly. She would have despised what I did, he said. Maribel did not answer. He opened his eyes. The admission did not free him. It did not cleanse anything. It was only one true sentence in a room crowded with lies. Maribel took it for what it was and no more. Yes, she said. Then she turned to leave. Maribel. She stopped, but did not face him. What do you want from me? The question sounded almost human. That made it more dangerous. Maribel stood with her hand on the door. I want you to live long enough to understand that you kept the house and lost the daughter. She opened the door. This time, when she left, he did not call her back. The inquiry lasted 6 weeks. Lowmere had never seen so many important men become interested in damp corridors. The district magistrate arrived with clerks, seals, and the manner of someone who disliked scandal less than being surprised by it. Dr. Havel gave testimony. So did Elias Seldo. So did Tomas. So did Alaric Halbrecht, who chose accuracy over comfort and thereby made himself unpopular with both families. Lady Serapha spoke in a voice that shook only at the beginning. Garin Pike confessed enough to condemn himself and others, then refused to soften his part. Ven was found hiding in a cousin's barn 2 towns away. He blamed Lord Edric, then Garin, then confusion, then illness, then the strain of office. No one believed him, but everyone recorded him carefully. Brandt denied everything until Olwen, terrified and sweating, contradicted him in front of 3 clerks. After that, Brandt discovered memory in pieces, all of them selfing and too late. Lord Edric did not deny ordering Elias confined. He denied intending permanent harm. He spoke of impropriety, discipline, family honor, private correction. He chose each phrase as if language itself might still obey him. It did not. The magistrate did not imprison him in his own dungeon, though many in Lowmere would have liked the poetry of it. Men with land seldom fell as far as men without it. But Edric was stripped of direct authority over tenant discipline. A crown-appointed steward took temporary control of estate accounts. Fines were levied. Debts were reviewed. The old lower cells were ordered sealed, then opened, then sealed again in the official manner, with records made and signatures witnessed. None of it brought Elias back. Mary said so once, and after that people stopped telling her justice had been done. Justice, she said, was too often a broom arriving after the house had burned. Still, practical things changed. The Seldo farm's debts vanished from the ledgers, not as a gift but as correction of unlawful assessments. Mary accepted that. Tomas and half the town repaired her roof before winter. Someone left 2 sacks of feed by her gate with no note. Someone else fixed the south fence. Old Bram brought flour every Tuesday and pretended he had milled too much by accident. Mary kept Elias's coat on its peg. She did not move it. Not that summer. Not the next. Maribel came to the farm once a week. At first Mary did not know what to do with her. Neither did Maribel. The first visits were awkward, full of pauses and almost apologies. Maribel brought no coins, no baskets tied prettily with ribbon, no grand gestures that would force Mary to be grateful. She brought her hands. Mary put them to work. The first day, Maribel ruined a row of beans by pulling the seedlings with the weeds. Mary stared at the damage. Maribel stared too, horrified. Then Mary said, "Well, that ground is certainly clean." Maribel burst into tears. Mary sighed, handed her a cloth, and told her crying was allowed but did not replant beans. So Maribel learned. Badly at first. Then less badly. She learned how to carry water without spilling half of it. How to check fence posts. How to scatter feed while avoiding the rooster, who hated her with immediate clarity. She learned that goats had no respect for grief, rank, or hymns. She learned that Mary's cough worsened in damp weather and that Mary would lie about it unless watched. They spoke of Elias in pieces. Never all at once. Mary told her he had been afraid of geese as a child, though he denied it until age 15. Maribel told Mary about the bridge, about Seldo measure, about the chapel rain without describing anything that belonged only to them. Mary told her he used to sing off-key when chopping wood. Maribel told her he once confessed he had never seen the sea and had pretended not to care. Would he have liked it? Maribel asked. Mary was kneading dough at the time. The sea. Yes. Mary thought about it. He'd have complained it was too wet, then stared at it for hours. Maribel smiled. That night, she wrote it down. She had begun writing everything down. Not for publication. Not at first. She wrote because memory frightened her. It had betrayed her once, bending under pain and persuasion until she nearly believed Elias had left. She would not let it soften again. She wrote the orchard. The bridge. The chapel. The cell. The taps in the wall. The way Elias said, "I didn't leave." The way he died after hearing the truth reach him at last. She wrote her father too. Not as monster only. That would have been easier, and therefore dishonest. She wrote him as he was, controlled, grieving, possessive, intelligent, cruel in the name of care, loving in a way that destroyed what it held. She did not forgive him on the page. She did not need to. Writing was not mercy. It was record. The title came late. Serapha found her one evening in the old music room, papers spread across the pianoforte. "You should eat," Serapha said. "You sound like Mary." "Then I improve." Maribel looked up with tired eyes. "I need a title." "For what?" "For him." "For us." "For what happened?" Serapha approached the papers. She did not touch them. "Something simple." "No. No. Simple things are too easy to shelve." Serapha almost smiled. "Then something difficult." Maribel looked toward the east wall, toward the direction of her bedroom, toward the vent that had since been torn out and laid bare. The shaft behind it had been exposed by workmen. In daylight, it looked smaller than terror should have been allowed to be. She dipped her pen. Then she wrote. Where her vent became his window, and her silence became his grave. Serapha read it. Her face tightened. Yes, she said. That will not be shelved easily. Maribel closed the ink bottle. No. Aster Hall did not recover its old silence. It remained large, pale, and powerful, but its walls had learned echo. Servants spoke more freely when doors closed. Tenants came to the steward's office in groups rather than alone. The lower corridors were mapped, inspected, and finally bricked. Children in Lowmere dared one another to run up the hill and touch the outer gate. Sometimes they shouted Elias's name before fleeing, half afraid, half delighted by their own boldness. Lord Edric aged sharply that winter. He did not become gentle. Stories prefer such neat punishments, but life has less discipline. He remained proud. He remained exacting. He remained capable of making a room colder by entering it. Yet something had gone out of him that did not return. Command still answered him, but not completely. People obeyed with memory in their eyes. Maribel did not dine with him unless duty required it. When she did, they spoke politely of weather, accounts, repairs, letters. The old intimacy, flawed as it had been, did not revive. He had asked once whether she would ever forgive him. She had answered, I do not know. He had said, that is not no. She had said, do not make hope cheap. After that, he did not ask again. Alaric Halbrecht visited twice more before winter, each time with books for Maribel and no proposal. Their friendship became one of those unlikely bridges built after floods, narrow, useful, and surprising to everyone who crossed it. His father disapproved. Alaric continued anyway, which improved Maribel's opinion of him considerably. You could still make a respectable marriage, he told her once while they walked near the garden wall. I could also learn falconry or poison making. Those are not equal alternatives. To you. He laughed. Will you never marry, then? Maribel looked beyond the wall toward Lowmere. I will never be traded. That is not the same answer. It is the only one I have. He accepted it. Not everyone did. There were whispers, of course. A lord's daughter ruined by scandal. A farm boy made grander in death than he had ever been in life. A girl too proud, too damaged, too romantic, too cold. Lowmere whispered. Neighboring towns whispered louder because distance improves certainty. Maribel learned to let them. She had been misunderstood by silence. Misunderstanding by noise seemed less dangerous. In spring, 1 year after the Tithe Festival where Elias first thanked her by not quite looking at her, Maribel returned to St. Ara's orchard. Mary came with her. So did Tomas, Serapha, Alaric, Old Bram, Dr. Havel, and half of Lowmere pretending not to attend something formal. No priest presided. Maribel had not asked for one. This was not a burial or a service. It was an unveiling. At the center of the orchard, beneath the oldest apple tree, stood a small stone marker. Not grand. Not polished into nobility. Local stone, grey and weather-taking, carved by the same hand that had marked Elias's coffin. The inscription read: Elias Seldo. Who did not leave. Who was heard too late. Mary stood before it for a long time. Then she touched the words with 2 fingers. Good, she said. That was all. Maribel had thought she would speak. She had prepared words, then discarded them, then prepared others. But standing in the orchard with blossoms opening overhead and Lowmere gathered between Chapel Ruin and Field Road, she found that speeches belonged to people trying to guide feeling. There was no guiding this. So she simply stood beside Mary. Tomas cleared his throat. I'd like it remembered, he said suddenly, that Elias owed me 3 buttons and a decent apology for breaking my fishing pole. A few people laughed. Mary looked at him. He broke your fishing pole because you tried to spear a boot. It was underwater. It looked fish-like. It was my boot, old Bram said. More laughter came then, gentle and uneven, surprising everyone by arriving. Maribel closed her eyes. This, too, was grief. Not only weeping. Not only black dresses and lowered voices. Grief was also laughter returning to a place it had once lived and finding the door open. Wind moved through the apple branches. Petals fell. One landed on the stone, caught briefly in the carved line beneath Elias's name. Maribel thought of the pressed blossom in his note. Not beautiful enough for your hair. Keeping it here would be selfish. She smiled then, and crying came with it. Mary took her hand. They stood that way until the wind lifted the petal away. Years later, people in Lowmere would tell the story differently depending on who told it. Some said Elias Seldo had been a fool who loved too high and paid for it. Some said Maribel Aster had been brave. Some said she had been selfish. Some said Lord Edric had acted as lords always had and merely been unlucky enough to be discovered. Some turned the whole thing into romance and forgot the hunger, the door, the days of unheard calling. Mary hated those versions. Tomas corrected them loudly in taverns. Serapha corrected them quietly in rooms where polite people tried to make cruelty sound complicated. Maribel wrote the truth as best she could and left copies where they could not be easily burned. But stories always escaped their owners. The orchard remembered differently. It kept no argument, no title, no defense. It kept the press of 2 young bodies sheltering from rain in a ruined chapel. It kept footsteps through wet grass. It kept laughter by a broken wall, a girl saying she could breathe without permission, a boy believing tomorrow because she had asked for it. Aster Hall remembered too. Not willingly. In the east tower, Maribel had the vent removed and the wall opened. She ordered the sealed shaft left visible behind glass, not hidden again under paint. Visitors found it unsettling. That was the point. Beneath it, in a small frame, she placed one line. Some silences are built. Lord Edric never entered that room again. Maribel did. Often. Not to punish herself. Not after a while. She came because truth needed maintenance. Because walls, once exposed, still tempted plaster. Because love, when buried by power, had to be named again and again or else the world would smooth it into lesson, scandal, or song. On the second spring after Elias died, she left Aster Hall. Not dramatically. No flight through storm. No stolen horse. No cloak gathered in fear. She left in daylight with 2 trunks, 3 books, her mother's letters, and the manuscript tied in brown cord. Mary stood by the lower road to see her off. Tomas drove the cart. Alaric had arranged rooms in Bellwether with an aunt who liked difficult women and owned too many cats. Before climbing into the cart, Maribel looked back at the manor. It rose above Lowmere as it always had, pale stone, black iron, long windows catching a sun the town had not yet received. For most of her life, it had been the whole world. Now it was only a house. Mary came to stand beside her. "Will you come back?" she asked. "Yes," Maribel said. "But not to live under it." Mary nodded. "Good." Maribel looked toward the orchard beyond the chapel road. From this distance, she could not see Elias's marker, but she knew where it stood. "I thought leaving would feel like betrayal," she said. Mary's voice was gentle. The dead don't need us trapped to know they were loved. Maribel closed her eyes. No one had said it so plainly before. When she opened them, the road waited. Tomas clicked his tongue to the horse. The cart moved. Lowmere passed slowly at first: Market Green, Church Wall, Mill Bridge, the old stone crossing where Elias had warned her about her gloves. Maribel watched each place until it slipped behind her. At the edge of town, the road climbed. For a moment, Aster Hall, the orchard, the mudfields, the churchyard, and the low brown hills all fit into one view. A whole tragedy made small by distance. Maribel touched the manuscript in her lap. Its title had been written in dark ink across the first page. Where her vent became his window, and her silence became his grave. The cart rolled east, toward Bellwether, toward work she had not yet begun, toward a life that would not be the one she had imagined beneath apple trees. Behind her, Lowmere continued. The fields needed tending. Bread needed baking. Goats needed feeding. Rain came when it wished. The poor counted coins. The rich counted reputation. Children dared one another at gates. Elias Seldo rose each morning, made tea, and sometimes spoke to her son's coat before taking it from the peg at last on a warm day in June. And in St. Ara's orchard, when spring returned, the apple trees flowered heavily. Petals fell over the grass, over the ruined chapel stones, over the marker beneath the oldest tree. They fell without judgment. They fell on the place where Elias had loved her briefly, fiercely, and without leaving. They fell on the path Maribel had taken down from the hall. They fell on the earth that held him. And when the wind moved through the branches, the orchard gave back a sound almost like tapping. 1, 2, 3.